where are my shadows and where can I shine the light onto so that my inner light gets to shine out. And when that happens, when you start to shine your inner light, you will have the people that are not good for you, they will fall out of your life. Hardcore, the Human Design Podcast.
Hey yo, and welcome to Heartcore. I'm Chell, that's Miko. We're coming at you from 2 different continents. I know that sounds wild and crazy, but we do it every week. What's up, Miko?
Hi, Chell. Hi, everyone.
We are in your favorite month. I can't even say least favorite month, it just is a month. It just is a month. But we're in February, the love month. And that's kind of the theme of everything that we're talking about this month. But this week, we're talking about loving yourself, because tomorrow's Valentine's Day, or whenever you're listening, February 14th of this year and or last year and or 2 years ago was Valentine's Day. And that's the topic that we've chosen to talk about, because you really can't love other people unless you are fully on board with you, right? And people will say otherwise, I'm sure, but it really breaks down to treating yourself with love, respect, and we're going to get into not just like the practical aspects of that, but like where you can look into your design about all of that, and acknowledge that this is the perfect time of year to start embracing this in your life if you're not already, and to love yourself. Buy yourself those flowers.
Yes, no matter when you're listening to this episode, now is the perfect time to start. So if you haven't started yet, and this is really a subject that is dear to both of our hearts. For me, it's something that I've built my entire business around. That's how much I believe in it. I really believe that this is the foundation to everything in life. I don't necessarily always promote it that way, because not everyone is ready to hear about self-love. Not everyone is ready to accept and understand this principle. But one of the simplest ways that I connect with it is that when you genuinely, truly love yourself, then no matter what happens around you, it's not going to shake you up as much, because you know that you have yourself, you have your back, you can give yourself anything that you need, anything that you desire, and you're not relying on anyone or anything around you. And to reach that point, of course, it's a lifelong journey. It's not going to be done ever, in my opinion. It's really a process that you have to work on every single day. Sometimes more, sometimes less. Sometimes we're going to be more dedicated to it, and other times we're going to be like, no, today, you know what? I just need to Netflix and chill. And that is also okay if it's sometimes, if it's not a consistent all the time kind of thing. And if you're aware that when you're doing it, sometimes you're doing it to numb yourself as well. The awareness is the important thing about it. So that's why I'm saying doing it all the time, or on a regular basis, that is maybe every day, or I don't know. I don't really want to put a time frame on it of how much is right or wrong, but you need to also take care of your other aspects, and you really need to face the music sometimes and not just numb yourself.
I think there's a time and a place for different coping techniques, right? Or different strategies that you have to like zone out. But if you are zoned out too much, you're not really tapping into yourself, or you may be putting something on the back burner that you are choosing not to address, which is not necessarily the best for yourself long term. So, you want to hop into this? I mean, I think we've already hopped. We're kind of a bunny already. We're multiple bunnies. Hippity hopping.
Today, totally. We've been hoppling all over the place even before we press the start record button. So yeah, let's keep going. Let's see how far down the rabbit hole we could take this.
Guys, I don't know what's happening in the transits right now, and we definitely should have checked, but Miko and I are both kind of on one, so have fun with this episode. Hey, yo.
By the way, if you haven't tried the Sassy Tarot yet, highly recommend it. ChatGPT robot that is going to read your tarot cards in a very funny way.
That's how we started our endeavor today. It was great. Okay, so we are going to break down self-love into several different components and also weave in human design into this as well, because We're hardcore, and we talk about human design on this podcast if you're new here. So the 6 foundations of self-love that we are going to look at today are mental health, self-acceptance, boundaries, self-care, self-talk, and self-discovery, just to sprinkle that on and name a few. Name them all. Those words. Let's hop into understanding self-love as a whole and what is self-love. Miko, you've kind of alluded to this already, but since this is your world, this is your life, I'm gonna let you take this off. Or take it on, take it off, do the things.
So, self-love has been a topic of mine, even in my teenage years, I would say. It's not that I followed it, but this is where it came up over and over again. So for me, it all started with me not feeling very comfortable in my skin. I didn't really like my body, and I didn't really understand much of what was going on with my body. And so for me, when I was going through the teenage years, going through all the sexual aspects that were also coming into the world at a certain age, I was very confused. I didn't know what was right for me, what was not right for me. And this spanned across the physical body, the mental aspects and the emotional aspects, the energetic aspects, and the spiritual aspect. So for me, I didn't believe in energies, and I didn't believe in spiritual aspects of life. So for me, the main focus was, how do I eat healthy or eat well? How do I treat my body well? How do I exercise correctly? And mindset was also not really the biggest thing for me at that time. So when I was a teenager, I also drank a lot of alcohol. I smoked a lot. And I was really living a very unhealthy life, even though my parents had always guided me in a very healthy way. So they always cooked. My mom always cooked fresh food. We barely had anything in the freezer. We really received all the love and care that we could have at home. And still, I chose the path of self-destruction in a few instances, which was really unhealthy. But at some point around 20, I started to be like, okay, something needs to change. I stopped smoking when I was 19, and I smoked for a very long time. But I stopped smoking when I was 19, and I then started to become curious when it came to nutrition and exercising. And once I started to dive into these aspects, I noticed approximately when I was 25, 26, when I was going to India, I noticed that there was a strong correlation between all of these elements of you, the physical, the mental or the psyche, the energy and the spiritual. And I started to also connect more and more with the energetic aspects of who we are, and also eventually with the spiritual aspects. So to me, self-love is really a connection of all of these 4 elements of you and decluttering these elements of you. So you can consider them as layers of an onion, for example. You have all of those 4 layers, and within these 4 layers, you have blockages which accumulate throughout your lifetime, which make you believe things about yourself that you are or are not, that you are not most of the time, whether it is your own self-imposed belief system, which, however, often comes from the world around us, because we need to be influenced by something to think certain things. If we were born and raised in an entirely different continent or country, our thought processes, our beliefs, they would be different. I love one of the speakers that is called Vera Birkenbiel. She was fantastic because she was so interested in languages. She knew approximately 30 languages and she was teaching languages. And one of the things that she said is even your language influences you. So depending on which language you were born or raised with, you are going to take certain belief systems from these languages. So for example, French, when you say you want to hit a target, the French don't say they want to hit a target. They will say they want to go towards the target, close, like around the target. That's how they speak. But when you say it in German, for example, it's really hitting the target, or even in English, you would say hitting the target. But even that would influence your thought process, the way that you see the world. And of course, human design also influences you and your thought process. So we talked about this just before clicking record, that Celestina mentioned the transits, for example, a big influence, and understanding who you truly are, which is what your human design can show you, and understanding how others are impacting you, but also how planets are impacting you. So the transits, the daily transits, the solar return, the Uranus opposition, the Saturn return. So all of these things have an impact on you. So this is a little bit of an introduction to what self-love is. So when you're considering those 4 elements of you, I consider self-love, or this unconditional love that is inside of you, that's the center of all of those 4 layers. So the onion example of being encapsulated, the center, your self-love well, is what it covers up. So the more that you declutter these elements of you from belief systems, but also physical challenges or mental challenges, mental blocks, this is when you start to get closer and closer to your inner source of self-love, or of unconditional love. So this is, to me, what it is. And the closer you get to it, the less clutter you have in these 4 elements of you, the more you will feel this radiate from you. The more you will feel it for yourself, but you will also feel it for others around you. And the other people around you, they will also feel it. So what will happen when you start this journey? It's not an easy journey. It's really not easy at all. So just let's make this clear right away. This is for warriors. This is not for people that consider themselves victims. And when I say victim mentality, it is people that point fingers at others. You did this, you did that, you did this. Not I. What did I do that I can change, that I can take in control to really have an impact? Responsibility, the ability to respond. This is what it's all about. This is this journey. What have I done? What are my blocks? Where are my shadows? And where can I shine the light onto so that my inner light gets to shine out? And when that happens, when you start to shine your inner light, you will have the people that are not good for you, they will fall out of your life. So this is another point of why this journey isn't easy, because you will lose people and you will attract amazing, beautiful individuals into your life. So it's not easy, but it's so worth it. And the most important individual you will attract is your true self. And this is what it's all about.
Guys, I know we just started like a new style of editing where you can't see the other person when the other person is talking, but all of the snaps for everything you just said, Miko, because, dude, I think, yes, taking accountability for yourself, your actions, can be really scary. It can be very overwhelming, and it's very easy to blame other people for things that don't go right or well in your world, but it's so much more brave when you get to a point where you can accept responsibility, and that is the turning point in your life where you can be like, wow, this is me, I am brave, and then continuing down this path, self-acceptance, and that, I think, to some extent is the first step, right? Admitting that there are things that potentially need to be changed, and then taking action. Ooh, that hit so hard. If you guys only understood the last week and a half of my life, you'd understand. So I think when it comes to this, though, it's how do we get into this mindset? How do we start taking steps towards this? You've mentioned it already, right? Like surrounding yourself with other people who can amp up your vibe, but also speaking to yourself in a way that is more positive if you are speaking to yourself in a negative way. Go back to the episode that we posted earlier this year about different ways to speak to yourself, the Delulu episode, and some of those strategies that we discussed in that episode can be really beneficial in helping you get to this mindset and just opening yourself up a bit more in this space. So give that a shot if this first step seems scary and overwhelming and you're just not in that space yet.
Yeah, that's a great tip. And especially the reason why self-talk is so important is because it does create your reality. It is how you're going to see the world. When you see yourself, the person that is closest to you, there's no one that is closer than you yourself. And when you talk negatively to that person, how are you supposed to then see the rest of the world? This is a vicious circle that you get stuck in. So one exercise that we thought of before this episode was to ask you, dear listener, to just take a few moments to pause right now and to write down the 3 most common thoughts you have about yourself. And this is a great start to work on yourself, on your thoughts. And what I often do with my clients as well is to have them go through an entire day of thinking about their thoughts, of really not just thinking about them, but actually making a checklist. So you have a blank piece of paper with all your positive thoughts. And yes, I'm going to categorize them right now into positive and negative. I know that's not a very liked thing to do in the self-help community, but we are going to categorize them. So you have 1 blank page for your negative thoughts, 1 blank page for your positive thoughts. And on there, you will just make a mark. So you don't have to write down the entire thought. Just make 1 mark, like a line, every time you have a positive or a negative thought. And you do that for 1 whole day. At the end of the day, you can then check these 2 lists that you have, or these 2 pages, and you will see how many of those thoughts are positive and how many of your thoughts are negative. And no one needs to see this, okay? This is just for you. It's a self-check. And it's not just checks for your thoughts when it comes to you, but generally all of your thoughts. When you're walking down the street, you see people, how do you look at them? What are the thoughts that come to your mind when you're looking at the other people around you? What are the thoughts that come to your mind when you're looking at yourself in the mirror? What do you think about on a regular basis? This influences a huge part of your life. And yes, that's why Celestina is pointing you towards the other episode as well, because it's so helpful to understand your thoughts in order to change your thoughts. So once you have these blank pieces of paper that have just started to fill up, you can then see, okay, maybe I need to change a little bit about my inner critic. And then you can do a little bit of a reverb, like you can just be like, okay, I'm going to change my thought processes. And at the beginning, it's going to take effort. It's going to be difficult to figure out how you can change your negative thoughts into a more positive thought. And it doesn't mean that you have to walk around being positive all the time. That's impossible. Nothing is going to always be all the time a certain way. And we're not aiming for perfection here. But becoming aware, this is what we're trying to do. We want to become more aware of every single aspect of ourselves. And the more you can become aware of these things, the more you can become the warrior that we're here to be, like the self-love warrior, taking the sword into your own hand and be like, yeah, I need to change this.
Like Xena, the warrior princess.
I always loved her.
My dad always says, I don't think this is his quote, so I'm not going to say this is quoted by my dad, but he says this a lot. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And I think that that's so beautiful because it's accurate, right? If we have a shitty mindset about something, everything in our world is going to be shitty. I was sitting on the tram the other day and this teenage girl was just kvetching about her first day at school and how horrible it was. And I wanted to be like, girly, if you stay in this mindset, this is what you're going to perpetuate in life. But, I have this hindsight, 20 years older than her? Ugh, it's weird to say that, but I have this hindsight 20 years older than her, but she's not going to listen to me. We have to experience it on our own and come to this realization on our own. All of this to say is you are the master of your thoughts. And if you are willing to step up for yourself, you can make some big changes in your life. significant changes in your life. So you may be asking, how does this flow into human design? Great question, guys. We'll tell you. So let's start super high level with your strategy and authority and how that relates to self-love. So for the generators and manifesting generators out there, you need to listen to your gut. I know that sounds kind of on point since you guys are the energizer bunnies of the world, but listening to your gut instead of forcing things is really important. And oftentimes we're told, go, 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 do, but we forget to listen. Is this actually for us? Is this something that lights me up? You should feel like a light bulb went off in your gut, right? Like that's kind of the vibe that you're going for as to how you know something is right for you. So self-love for you means having patience and responding to things that light you up, that feel like that energizer bunny plus flashlight illumination in your gut, rather than chasing for something. So feel into that if you are either a generator or a manifesting generator. For my projectors out there, you guys have to wait. That is your mantra for life, waiting for that recognition before sharing your wisdom. So the self-love piece of it is, do you value your own insight before the rest of the world does? Are you seeing the genius, the beauty that you bring to the world? And if not, how can you switch that on? How can you appreciate the difference, the insights that you can see that other people probably don't? My fellow manifestors out there, what's up, guys? So we need freedom. We need freedom to be able to initiate and do the things, right? We are the embodiment of Nike's Just Do It. Also, how dope would it be if Nike sponsored this podcast? Guys, put that out into the world, please. Because as a manifester, I feel like we could do something, Nike. Just let me know. Miko, we'll figure out another company that would represent a projector maybe a little bit better. If their motto is sit and wait, perhaps. Told you we were on one, guys. Very good. So, my fellow manifestors out there, what self-love looks like is giving yourself the permission to act without having to wait for approval. Sometimes, yes, that is scary. But if you are feeling that little niggle inside of you, I assume that means like small inkling of a feeling. Google it. But if you're feeling that little niggle inside of you, it's telling you something, right? Act upon it. If you're getting that download, if you're listening for that download, act upon it. You don't have to ask for permission. You can tell someone, but you are not asking for permission. And damn, it feels good. Let me tell you. Reflectors. To the 1%ers out there of human... Oh, wow. The reflectors are the 1%ers of human design. I just had that aha moment. To the reflectors out there, you guys need time to process your decisions. A lunar cycle. And I know, I understand that sounds taxing and can feel taxing. I work with a reflector. He doesn't easily make decisions. However, if you can learn to accept and trust that your decision making and your self-love comes in understanding your fluidity, that is huge. You're not meant to rush things. You're meant to absorb and reflect back and learn from that and really feel into what your energy feels like as the whole world is going around you, right? So the more you can honor that and appreciate that about yourself, it says a lot about the way then you interact in the environment that you're in. So, some reflection exercises, regardless of your type. Ask yourself, where are you out of alignment within your strategy and within your authority? And maybe that's the place to start, right? Just going back to the basics and aligning yourself and really trying to lean into making decisions within your strategy and authority. And secondly, what type of small action can you start taking today to honor your energy type? What does that look like for you?
Thank you for sharing all of that. And I think this is always a great reminder that we need to go back to strategy and inner authority. This is the basics. And if you haven't followed your strategy and your inner authority for a certain amount of time. I'm not going to say 7 years because I don't believe in that, because I believe that the path to self-love is not only through human design. It doesn't have to be. It can also be other self-reflective practices, in my personal opinion. But a lot of the human design community is not going to agree with me, and that's fine. So, that being said, I just read, or I am reading, yes, please, manifester.
I was going to say, it's a projector in action, valuing her own thoughts before she puts them out to the world.
Oh.
So meta.
Yeah, well, I was going to talk about the manifester for a second, because I have spent the last 1.5 weeks diving deeper into the manifester, because I've had a request from a manifester, and I am trying to understand it in a much, much, much deeper level than I usually, or I have until now. So one of the things I was reading, or I am still reading because it's a lot to read, but one of the things that I'm currently reading is the Manifestor Manifesto by Ra Uru Hu. And he is talking about the manifestors being the only type that can initiate. So yes, they are the only people out there that can actively do something without having to wait for something. But even the manifestors have to wait for their inner authority to kick in. Okay, so that's, I just want to take that. I just want to mention that ahead of time. But apart from that, once their inner authority kicked in and said, hey, yeah, let's do this, they can go and inform the people that are going to be impacted by these actions. And when we're going to get to the boundary section of today's subject, I'm going to go back to the manifestor as well, because the boundaries are very important for every single type to understand in order to use them properly. And the manifestors, they need to communicate within these different boundaries. So simply informing people, great, yeah, that's amazing advice, but sometimes we don't even know how to inform or what to inform. What are the important things to inform about? And what I liked as an example that Ra was giving in the Manifestor Manifesto was the difference between a manifestor and, for example, a generator or a manifesting generator. So when you are in school, back in the day, when there were these school dances, you would have the girls on one side and the boys on the other side, and the generators, they need to wait for their sacral response, their gut response. But the interesting thing is that the only people that can get rejected, according to Ra, are manifestors, because a generator doesn't need to go through the rejection process. And I found this sentence alone, or this example alone, was so impactful, because the manifestors always have to put themselves out there. They take action, they step into action, they inform the people, but still they become very vulnerable through this action, through doing things. And because of them having a very repelling aura as well, from the moment that they're born into the world, it shocks people in certain ways, or it pushes them away. And it is a very different energy to work with, or to understand. And when generators would simply really dive into this waiting, then they wouldn't face, according to Ra, they wouldn't face rejection, because they don't have to initiate. They wait for the sacral to respond, and through this waiting, they will attract the right people. So the rejection aspect is also going to go down. And this goes for every single type, even the manifestor, that when you're waiting for the correct inner authority response, your rejection is going to reduce. the rejection you're going to face from other people is going to reduce. They're still going to be the ones that will most likely, at least according to Ra, face more rejection. But the other types, when you wait for the projector, wait for invitation or recognition, for the generator, wait for your sacral response, and for the reflectors, wait for the lunar cycle, and wait for your inner authority as well. So giving yourself permission to take space, to take time for your decisions, that is going to reduce the amount of times you're going to feel rejected. So it may not mean that people are rejecting you, but you will feel less rejected when you're waiting.
Very interesting. I can tell you that from like a heart pull perspective, you have to be very, at least for me, I have to be very aware of my body. And sometimes when I have too much externally going on, I don't have in touch with my body to be able to get that or from like that heart pull. So I feel like on paper, all of this sounds easy. I don't know if that's the right word. It does though, right? It sounds easy being able to read it. But in practice, guys, this is someone who's had human design in her world for going on 5 years. Crazy. But yeah, you still have to practice all of this self-love. We're going to talk more about this, to be able to feel into all of this ahead of time, right? So all of these components, it's not just one or the other, it's all of them that kind of need to come together to be able to feel into your body, to listen to what it's telling you. That was a really good insight though.
The fascinating thing that you just did was that now that you did it, you said and and this is a generator or manifesting generator response, a natural gut response when they do that. And that's what also Ra was saying in the Manifestor Manifesto, that manifestors are trained to respond like generators, or to be like generators, to have all this energy, except for, yes, wanting to initiate as well. But this is... It's funny that you were just saying that, because he was saying that this is so deeply ingrained into a manifestor as well. This a lot of times, even though it's not their natural way. So yeah, the point that you mentioned regarding self-awareness and stepping into your body is a huge one. And this is also kind of where we can go into the transits, I feel, because as you say, I mean, it does get easier, I feel, because the more that you become aware of who you truly are, and the more that you understand your own definitions and your own personal chart, the more you can decipher, okay, hey, wait, that's not me. And hey, yeah, this is me, or this is the transit, or it's another person in my aura that is impacting me. And this is a huge part of being self-aware. I love this subject. Mindfulness to me is like nearly no better tool out there. Or this is a tool that I believe every single one, no matter what type, no matter what color, no matter what gender, no matter who you are, you should practice mindfulness, because this is a key to becoming self-aware. When you're practicing mindfulness, you start to be present in this moment, using all of your 5 senses and seeing the world as if it was the first time you've ever experienced this moment. And by doing that, you are in the now, because you can't be with all of your 5 senses. You can't be in the future or in the past. Your 5 senses are here in the now. That's how they work. And that's why mindfulness is so important. And understanding and practicing mindfulness will also make you become more aware of what is going on within your body. Whenever you're encountering a challenging situation, whenever you're reacting instead of responding to someone, you can feel it beforehand, before actually having the words catapult out of your mouth and attack the other person. you will start to learn how to feel the senses that are happening inside of you before you verbal diarrhea all over them.
I think this also comes up if you have open or undefined centers, because the energy that people are bringing to the table, you are amplifying, right? So not just being aware of your defined centers, but also understanding the energy in your undefined centers or your open centers can be very impactful as well. I've mentioned this multiple times here, but I've learned to stay chill if someone is yelling at me or if someone is angry around me, especially if it's emotionally fueled, because I know I will amplify it in someone else, right? So that is a very unique tool, but you need to be aware of it in the moment, right? Like if you allow your emotions, for me in this example, right? If I allow my emotions to escalate, that's just going to help escalate the other person, and that's not going to do either of us any good. But if in the moment I can practice mindfulness, be level-headed, look at my body language and reflect it back in how I want that person to feel and to react. If I can do that in that moment, that's a game changer for omitting or mitigating the potential of Miko's verbal diarrhea example. It's one practical way, I think, to be able to use mindfulness in the moment while also being aware of the different centers that you have defined or undefined or open in your chart.
Yeah, and if you haven't done so already, then take a listen at our centers episode. I think we have one, right? Where we go through the defined and undefined centers, because this is super, super, super helpful when it comes to, as I said, understanding who you are and who you are not, because the open or undefined centers is where you get influenced by others, and where, when, for example, if someone has a defined emotional solar plexus and yours is undefined, then what can happen is that when the defined emotional solar plexus is very sad or upset, or let's take those as an example, but they don't share it with you, they don't tell you about it, then when they come into the room, you pick up their emotions and you may be the one that starts crying, even though you have no idea why that just happened. But you are the one that is expressing, that is amplifying their emotions, taking it in, and you are the one that is escalating it. So being aware of that, what you can do is, as soon as this emotional impact hits you, you can say, hey, wait, okay, this is not me. You don't have to say it out loud, but you can say it to yourself and be like, hey, okay, this is not me. And then you tell the other person, hey, I'm just going to go take a walk for maybe 10 minutes, and you will join them back once you feel like they have calmed down and you are able to release their energy, because otherwise it can escalate and it can just be very uncomfortable. Because if someone is already in a low energy, then neither of you is going to be able to catch the other. This is the challenge. So you can only be able to support another person when you yourself feel balanced enough to do so. But if both of you are low, that's where it kind of just goes deeper and deeper down the bad path. Understanding your definition, your openness, your undefined centers, and also understanding which transits are happening right now. That can be very helpful. I personally, the ones that I feel most to me are the root and the emotional solar plexus. The pressure I feel when the root is defined, or the emotional center being defined with a 35-36 for me in the last few months, I was crying out of nowhere. I was like, what is going on? Okay, it was triggered by something, but I hadn't felt this emotional in so long. Very intense.
I concur. As a non-emotional being to a non-emotional being, the root and the emotional center are just a fucking trip, dude. Although I understand now, though, why transits exist, right? It allows us to feel into energies that we don't necessarily have access to, and it's definitely a point to learn. It's teaching you something in that moment if you have the openness and willingness to be receptive to it, which is really cool. It can feel like a lot, but it can also be a really good learning tool.
Yeah, I love that insight. Great point, because otherwise people may feel, oh, those transits are bad and they're evil and they're distracting us from who we are and influencing us in ways that are not comfortable. But yes, very good point that they are here for us to learn more about the human experience. I mean, I personally believe that we chose to be here on this planet. We chose to be in a physical form and in a human form, and we may as well make the most of it. YOLO! So yeah, it's really, you only live once and you make the most of it. And I think just awareness, recognizing what is happening and transforming. I mean, how beautiful is it that we have the power to transform our normal reactive patterns or our normal processing patterns, perspectives, ways of seeing the world. It's beautiful. So that being said, self-acceptance is the key. A beautiful way to not just be aware, but as well accept yourself for who you are right now, but also for who you get to be in the future. So it's not that we're trying to fix ourselves all the time. We're not broken. There is nothing wrong. There's nothing broken. We don't need fixing. It's just that we have been influenced by things, by people, but by culture, by religion, by whatever it may be that is floating around us and inside of us as well. Genetics is also a thing that is influencing us. Then if you believe in it, also past generations influencing you. So there's a lot that can influence you. So what we're actually doing, and I didn't invent this, but I really like the thought process of that, is that we are unlearning, or we are re-becoming of who we are in our core, in our essence. We're just finding our way back to who we truly are, without all of this clutter that is on our layers or all around us in the different elements of who we are.
When it comes to self-acceptance from a human design standpoint, like I was saying earlier about noticing your undefined and open centers, it comes a lot into play into self-acceptance as well, because those centers are the ones where we can be most conditioned by outside sources. So that can make self-acceptance challenging, especially if we are being told that we need to be X, Y, and Z way and function in a certain way. The way to kind of back up and out of that is to identify those areas and do some of the unsexy work of working through, okay, cool, this is what this center feels like when it's open and or undefined, and this is what it feels like when it's defined. What is mine? What am I feeling? And then maybe do some unpacking work there. So one example is having an open G center, right? This can be a struggle with identity and direction, because that is the essence of this center. And as part of a self-love discovery, it could be accepting that you're meant to evolve, that you're meant to be different. And maybe that's dependent upon your environment or who you're with or what you're doing in this era of your life, right? Understanding that there's going to be an ebb and flow, especially in that center. So listen to the centers episode if we haven't said that enough. And then that'll give you a really good idea of the shoulds and the shouldas that you may be speaking to yourself in those centers, and how to unpack some of that as well. A mantra for your energy type when you're doing this unpacking. For generators, consider saying to yourself, I am enough, even when I'm waiting. Projectors, my worth is not tied to how much I do. Manifestors, I give myself permission to lead. And reflectors, I honor my rhythm and trust the flow. These are just some small steps that you can start taking for self-acceptance, right? There's definitely some other strategies that can be used, but if you can start taking some of these small steps in that direction, it can be really impactful. Third up, self-worth and boundaries. Your girl's got some trouble with some boundaries, so I can speak to this as in like not setting them well. That's what I mean, not setting them well. And I'm sure a lot of females can relate, right? Oftentimes we're told that we have to go above and beyond for people. One, because we're female, or two, because that's what inherently we feel like we need to do, either because of outside conditioning or just because of hormones. How do your boundaries that you're setting or not setting reflect your self-worth? Are you staying in, and I can say this because I've been in it, are you staying in environments that are toxic to your health, to your mental health, to your physical health, to your emotional integrity, any and all of those things, because you're trying to prove something or because you haven't set those boundaries, right? This can be a whole different episode to unpack, but this is really important on your journey in self-love to self-love. I think also as women, it can be very challenging to say no without feeling guilt behind it, or to walk away from something that you've put a lot into without feeling guilt. Consider this: every yes to others should not be a no to yourself. And this is really, I think, the essence of self-love and self-care is if you're hurting yourself to benefit someone else, it's not worth it. And oftentimes this is due to a lack of boundaries, a lack of putting ourselves first. And it can be scary to do that, right? Because oftentimes, especially in the work environment, let's just take that as an example. Your work is tied to a monetary, Jesus Christ. Your work is tied to a monetary income, right? And that saying no to that, especially without having something backed up to that, can be really scary. Or just pushing those boundaries can be a bit scary. So I understand. I've been there. And trust me, your mental health, your self is worth it to push some of those boundaries to make sure that you are feeling 100% you and that you're not saying yes to others but no to yourself. I challenge you to find one area in your life where you need stronger boundaries. Start small. Doesn't have to be big and scary. Just start small. Maybe it's with your dog and they can't come into your personal space after a certain time, or they can't sleep in your bed. Luna doesn't sleep in my bed, so that's not where I have to start. But I'm just saying, start small and really try honing in on some of those boundaries based off of your design rather than people pleasing. So what that can look like for you undefined sacrals out there, you're not here to work like a generator. Overworking equals burnout. One thing that I did in my world is I work 7 days a week, but I only work 4 to 5-ish hours a day. And that for me is a decent balance. Is it the best balance in the world? No. I don't want to be working 38 hours a week, 40 hours a week. But within the boundaries that I have as a full-time employee, that's the best that I can do, right? So finding something that works for you within that scope, I think can be really important. And working with your boss, if it's a work thing, just asking, seeing if it's something that is possible to have a bit more flexibility in your life. For those with an undefined throat, you don't have to prove yourself by speaking all the time. It's not necessary to verbal diarrhea. Wow, we really have overused that phrase tonight. It's not necessary to verbal diarrhea everything. When your voice is needed, you'll be heard. And lastly, a challenge for you. Identify one boundary you need to strengthen based on your open centers. Give that a noodle, guys.
So for the types of boundaries that you can consider, you can look at first your private and your personal life, your private and your business life, your work life. You look at physical boundaries, emotional boundaries, intellectual boundaries, energetic boundaries, time boundaries, material boundaries, and sexual/intimate boundaries. This is going to help you understand where you want to place boundaries in your personal and your work life. So I feel like having a list like this is making it a bit more understandable than just looking at your entire life trying to figure out your boundaries. And apart from that, the two centers that I also would like to mention is the splenic center. If that is undefined, you should be aware that there is a tendency to latch onto things that aren't healthy for you. So if you are with someone or if you know someone that has a defined spleen, you will probably find that defined spleen very charming, very comfortable, very attractive in certain ways. So just knowing this and being aware of that, if you have a defined and undefined spleen dynamic somewhere, that the defined spleen is aware that you may have a tendency to have a magnetic pull to them and not being able to let go of them so easily, and vice versa. And the other area that I would look at for sure is the emotional center. So having a defined or undefined emotional solar plexus may also lead to you not wanting to say no, because you don't want to have the brunt of their emotions hit you. That is often what happens, why emotionally undefined individuals don't tell the full truth and don't set the boundaries, because they don't want to feel the disappointment or the sadness or the frustration that the other person is going to throw back at you. So just be aware of these two centers if you do have them undefined, that this may be some form of you trying to protect yourself.
This feels like a therapy session.
Well, always good to have reminders. So the next one we're going to be talking about is self-care and emotional regulation. So what does that mean? Self-care, it goes beyond material things. A lot of times you are going to get convinced by the industry around us, hey, you should go get a massage, you should go buy yourself some beauty products and bubble baths and take yourself out for dinner. And yes, you can do all of these things. But also try to think of the things that don't need you to spend money. What are the self-care things that you can do without spending any money? And there's a lot that you can do that will help you, will support your health and well-being on all of the four elements without spending a dime. Because honestly, the thing that is most needed when it comes to the self-love journey is actually to sit in silence with yourself. That is what you need to do. And that is where it's painful. That is where the shadow work happens. That is where you're facing your demons in silence. And this is really something that I see so many people struggling with. There is always something on, or they just escape. They can't sit by themselves at their house or in their home. They need to go out, be with people, because they can't be by themselves. One of the biggest self-care advices that I would say is sitting with yourself in silence and pondering, reflecting, however that may be, either with pen and paper, which is the preferred way because it doesn't have any technological interferences. But you may just sit there without having to write something down, but writing something down is going to help you follow your own thought process. So when you're writing something, first of all, you're getting to release it through your nervous system, but you're also having more of a structure. And it doesn't have to look structured at the beginning, but writing it down is already going to help you understand, okay, hey, these are all of my thoughts. How can I bring some clarity into all of this? How can I work with this? Because if you're just sitting and thinking about it, you will lose track of what is going on, because there's so much that is going on, especially if you have an undefined headed ajna. This is one way. Another way is, of course, when we're looking at human design, you can look deeper into your design. You can look at the variables, which are going to be able to tell you which environment is going to support you best. and inspire you, what is going to help you digest information and food in a better way, how should you eat or what should you eat, depending on how should you eat, or not what, where, when. You can also look at your PHS, your primary health system. You can look at the way that you should be eating. There's just a lot of possibilities when it comes to human design and self-care. Another very big point would for me be just to go into nature. That's a great place to go, especially if you're very, very, very open in your design. The more open you are, the more time you should spend in nature. Connect with source energy. Connect with what you have been made of, which is nature. And release all of that energy that doesn't belong to you.
What this all breaks down to is cultivating a self-love ritual, routine, whatever you want to call it. I don't love either of those words because I can't stick to a routine for anything. But if you can incorporate some of these things into your life on a semi-regular basis, man, game changer. A daily self-love routine. It can be as simple as you're brushing your teeth and you're just looking yourself in the eye. If you remember a couple of episodes back, we were just talking about mirror work. It can be something that simple just to start out with. If you really feel like you can't bring anything else into your world, into your space. Maybe it's just sitting in silence on your commute and not having anything in your ear holes rather than listening to a book or listening to music. But small actions that can reinforce that self-worth are really important. Maybe it's just a gratitude list. Starting your day with a gratitude list. Awesome if you're writing it down. Maybe you're just still in bed and you can think of 2 to 3 things that you are grateful for either from the day before or you're grateful for going into your day. These are things that can be triggered by tasks or things that you're already doing, right? You probably already lay in bed for a good 5 minutes before you get up. Instead of grabbing your phone, try the gratitude practice. Or maybe while you're in the shower, work your gratitude practice. Or maybe that's your affirmation time, right? If you can find different ways to bring this into tasks that you're already doing throughout the day, I find that to be a lot more doable and a lot less daunting because you're doing these things already. And if you can just incorporate them into your world in that way, you're going to be more apt to do them. Try some of these things, or you can try some of the more conventional methods of actually writing things that you love about yourself down daily. You can do the actual mirror work that we discussed several episodes ago. Also, just use that episode as a how-to for a lot of these suggestions that we're making on this episode. But when it comes to specific things that you can do for your design, generators and manifesting generators out there, start your day with a gut check. What feels exciting? What's going to light you up that day? And I get it. Not every day do we have access to be able to do exactly what we want, but give it a shot. And perhaps it is within the scope of what you can do in your workday or in your world that day. Projectors, spend some time alone to reflect, recharge, and like Miko said, if you can do it in nature, even better. Manifestors, give yourself permission to follow those urges without guilt, but also give yourself the quiet space to listen to those urges that happen, because it's not going to happen if you have music blasting in your ears 24/7. And reflectors, check in with the lunar phases, my dudes. But actually though, check in with the lunar phases before you make commitments. And females who are reflectors, check in with your cycle and the lunar phases before you commit to things, because you have a lot more flowing through you than the dudes who are reflectors out there. It just becomes a little bit more, I don't want to say challenging, because it's still doable. It just becomes a little bit more in tune with your specific flow, and you need to be more in tune with your specific flow to make that happen.
To all women out there.
To all women out there.
Yeah, it's also, however, a lot of women that are putting these types of pressures onto themselves, and they are not listening enough to their menstrual cycle. So there is a content creator that I have been following for a few years, Vanessa Lau, shout out to her. She has like millions of followers, but still, I appreciate her work a lot. And she is really being brutally honest about what had happened to her in the last few years. She burnt out completely. She says that she burnt her 7-figure business to the ground because she was just done with it. She was just overworked, and now she's promoting healthy solopreneurship. And while doing that, she was mentioning in her YouTube series on how to build a YouTube channel that is successful, that gets views, etc. She mentions the importance of the menstrual cycle. And this is a very, very important point, because a routine is going to change. It's going to shift as well according to your female cycle. Even men have a cycle. So you will have to figure out your own personal cycle as a man as well. But there are going to be days where you have more energy. And for us, it's more obvious actually with the female cycle, because when we have our follicular phase and we have the menstrual phase, when we have the ovulation, there are going to be different phases that we go through, and we will have more energy during our ovulation. We will feel so sexy and attractive a lot of times, not all the time, but a lot of times. This is when we feel this way. This is when we feel powerful and we can rip out trees from the ground. I hope that's what your ovulation phase feels like. Then during your menstrual phase, you will feel low. It's going to be your winter phase, okay? You want to hibernate, you want to cuddle up and maybe have some hot chocolate, and that's also great. Drink it with plant-based milk, cow milk, however you want. This is going to be a different way that you feel, and you should listen to it. So don't think that you need to push those heavy weights every single day, literally in the gym if you go to the gym, or even figuratively. That's not how it works. Life is a wave. It's going up and it's going down, and with our female cycle we can hone in on that wave a bit more easily. The other thing that I find is a very great point to mention, because you mentioned it, that you cannot stick to a routine, and not everyone is made to stick to a routine. If you are a quad right, for example, or if you don't know what that means, that maybe you need to get a reading. But it's just that not everyone is meant to have a routine. A quad right is definitely not meant for a strict routine. It doesn't mean that they can't have one, but it's going to look very, very different than a quad left routine. So just being aware of that is very helpful, and it's going to help you structure your daily routines. And one tip that I can give you for someone like Celestina, if you don't like to have strict routines, or if you can't handle those, if you're not made for those, then that's perfectly fine. First of all, cut yourself some slack. But second of all, have a list of maybe 10 things that you know are beneficial for you. Just write down 10 things, like 15-minute or 10-minute breathing techniques, breathing exercises. Do some kind of, I don't know, Nadi Shodhana or squared breathing or something like that. That's one of your techniques. The other one is just meditation. The other one is yoga. The other one is exercising in the gym. The other one is journaling. The other one is listening to music. The other one is dancing. Just write down a list of things that you enjoy doing, but that are also healthy for you, for whichever element of you. And then on the day, you can just feel into it. You can look at your list and be like, yeah, today I feel like doing that, because this is going to already take away the pressure of, what do I even want to do? And which techniques and tools am I going to use? I have no idea. I have 50,000 available to me, but I don't know which ones are right or wrong. So you don't have to work your brain every single day again. You can just look at the list and be like, yeah, today I'll just do that for maybe 5 minutes. I can't handle more. And on other days you will feel, okay, I can do 3 of those for a bit longer. So it's going to provide you with some kind of flexibility. But even if you just do 5 minutes of one of those things, you're like, yeah, I did it. This is my little advice for the end of this episode. to help you just get a little bit of self-care into your day, no matter what you're going through.
One little nugget. It's about the journey, not the destination. We're not trying to achieve something. We're just trying to love ourselves a little bit more every day. So keep that in mind. There's no perfection with this, and that's okay. The more you learn about this, the more you learn about yourself, the closer you'll get, but it's really not about the end goal. It's about just how much more we can uncover, discover, and how much more we can love ourselves.
Absolutely. And another short little thing that came to my mind is having an SOS routine. Just a emergency self-care routine, which lasts only 5 minutes. And this is one that you can do every single day, no matter what is going on in your day. Just create your 5 minutes power boost, whether it is a love-filled boost that you need or a self-confidence boost or whatever it may be. Just create yourself a 5-minute SOS routine for the days where you feel like I can't do anything. So yeah, that brings our episode to an end. Thank you so much for listening. And thank you, Celestina, for all of your insights as well. And we will see you next time.
Right back at you, Miko. Ciao, guys.
Bye. Hardcore, the Human Design Podcast.
I think niggle is a word. I've heard more people say that recently. I'm not really sure what it means. I feel what I think niggle means is like that little feeling inside.
Glad I didn't do too many ab exercises at the gym today because I'm starting to feel it.
Okay. Where we at? Niggle. Thank you. Oh, maybe that's not what I meant. For those of you guys watching, I'm just gonna cut all of that out, Miko.
No, don't cut it.
No, it's gonna go in the bloops.
So
It'll be great.
I had to Google. And I had to show you.
Oh my god. I don't know how I'm gonna cut that. God damn it. Okay.
Couldn't
Marker.
resist.
Thanks.